So hello fellow Earthlings. This is Earthling 6455463728. And I was just looking at a documentary on YouTube called Why Were the Romans So Effective in Battle? Now the reason why I decided to go look for something like this is because, I don't know, it just popped into my head. If I remember, I'll mention it. But these are some of the things that I just get to thinking about and decided to go looking for, and I found the documentary and saw it. And I highly recommend this documentary for anybody who wants to know about Rome and they want to know about how the Roman Empire, how they were able to hold on to power, how they were able to conquer so much territory, perhaps a little bit about Julius Caesar, stuff like that. So I've looked up stuff on the Romans before, but this was exactly what I wanted to know. It documented the fact that Carthage was one place that had defeated Rome previously before it became a dominant power, as well as there was another Italian city, I think, that also defeated the Romans. And the Celts, I think is what they're called, also defeated the Romans. And the thing about it is that apparently the Romans learned from each one of these people, and they invented new technology basically to help them in battle. And they also came up with ideas and a system that was able to make sure that whatever they did that was a success, it carried forward. Some of the things that I thought were really, really interesting was the Roman javelin. The fact that when the Romans threw it, it was built in such a way that it would break inside of an opponent's shield. So it was the tip of it, the first edge, it would pierce their shield, and then it was made to break. They also had a short sword that was apparently different from what the Celts had. The Celts had these long swords that were really popular, that they used in order to give overhead blows. But they actually, and this was actually interesting, I think the Romans trained their troops for about 4 months. That was, in those days, that was really, really interesting. I mean, maybe this is something that they picked up from the Greeks, but I think the idea, no wonder they were able to conquer so many other people. I don't know how common training for the army was, but that was something really interesting. As well as the shape of the shield, of their helmet, the fact that it was rounded so that anybody that tried to hit the top of their shield, it would glance off of it, rather than if it was something that was more square. It's the same thing with respect for their shield. The shield was also curved as well, and in the documentary they didn't attach too much significance to the fact that it was curved, more than to say that it gave them more protection, since it was curved in on both sides. But I feel like it would also be able to glance blows directed at the shield as well. And I think it was pretty cool. I don't know if it was, well, they said that it was wood, I guess pieces of wood stuck together with leather. So that might have been to make it easier to carry, perhaps. It also said that they used to adopt the phalanx structure of fighting from the Greeks, but apparently they changed that, especially when it came to fighting the Celts, because it didn't work quite as well, I think. And they also mentioned the fact that they gave them the stuff that they gave them to hold, like their shields and the swords and the javelin. in training, it was twice as heavy as what they would ordinarily have to carry. So that was in order to prepare them. And they needed to be able to travel, I think it was either 20 miles. 20 miles in 5 hours. That's what was expected of the troops out of training. Also, apparently, the Romans made very good use of creating allies, if you want to use that as a particular mechanism. They didn't just defeat people, they also, I guess, gave them the encouragement by allowing some of the people who they conquered to become Roman citizens. They definitely learned or absorbed the technology from other cultures as well, from the Celts, from the Carthaginians, from the Greeks. Anytime they lost in battle, I presume they probably implemented something that they could use to counter whatever it was that caused them to lose. So when they were fighting against the Carthaginians, I believe it was, they had to create their own navy. And in order to be able to take advantage of the fact that they were so powerful on land, even though they were going up against a navy power, what they did was they invented ramps that they could use to get close to the ships, put the ramp down, and have their soldiers swarm across the ramps to be able to engage the enemy on a somewhat solid footing. So they were able to use that to their advantage. They also, I think they adopted the cavalry that they probably lost against the Celts because of, and they created their own saddle that had, I think it was 4 prongs on it, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, to enable the riders to be able to lean 45 degrees on either side, even though they didn't have stirrups on the saddles of the horses, which was really cool. With respect to making allies out of the people that they conquered, it really came to help them, because when Hannibal attacked Rome, even though he had some major victories, they were able to draw upon their allies for more men. So in one instance, I think they were saying that Hannibal, he won against a much larger force, maybe 3-1, by allowing them to feel that they were winning and then encircling the force that was coming. And he slaughtered around 50,000 men in that one battle, apparently. But because the Romans had so many allies, they were able to still have resources to call upon. What was something that was kind of funny about the whole documentary is that it was put together, and the information was coming from a lot of British experts. And Britain was one of these. There were no Italians. There were no people who could trace their ancestry back to the Romans that were actually in the documentary. There were none of these were Italian experts. And even though some of the naming, like, the people's names was in Italian, that was kind of funny to think about it. It was, probably some of these barbarians, who the Romans would have called barbarians, that were telling about Roman history. But the whole thing was I really, really enjoyed it. They talked about Spartacus and the fact that since this was a slave that had a Roman revolt, he led a slave revolt, and he was someone who would have been one of the gladiators, and for 3 years apparently he won against the Romans. The problem was, and I don't remember because I've heard of this before outside of the documentary, when they finally decided to go up against Rome, not in a guerrilla warfare format, that's when they lost. And the person who was narrating the story, well, there was there was a narrator. The person who was telling that part of the story, they were saying that that was their weakness. If they had just continued guerrilla warfare, they might have been able to continue the resistance for much longer. Other facts that were in there was that 40% of I think it's either the people in Italy or in Rome, were slaves. And there was also the mentioning, that Julius Caesar seemed to be a really nasty guy to people who weren't Romans. One of the stories that they gave was that one of these people, a group of people, wanted to migrate from one area through Roman-held land. And they asked Julius Caesar for permission to go through the land. And instead of giving permission, he attacked the people and killed apparently, a lot of them in terms of men, women, children, everybody. And I think it was about 300,000 people that he attacked. I don't remember how many of them he eventually killed. But the survivors had to go back to where they came from. So I guess there was, maybe they asked permission while they were on their way, and he got upset with that, so he decided to kill them. But then he went around all over the place, and I guess there was a lot of money, resources, or wealth to be made from slaughtering people. So he went all throughout non-Roman held areas, killing people, and I presume taking their wealth and whatever they had, and enriching himself and his soldiers, which was giving him power in terms of votes. And it was an interesting thing to hear how he rose to power, how he became a dictator for life. I hear a lot of Americans talk about, and people talking about America. They talk about the fact that America has a democracy, and it's because of the American greatness that this democracy is strong. And yes, America is a democracy. Yes, it's a strong democracy, along the lines of, actually, I guess they were one of the first real, consistent, persistent democracies that has existed in recent times. Because yes, there was the French Revolution, which would have inspired the United States, but then France had a number of different revolutions. It wasn't one persistent, consistent revolutions. Of course, they had Napoleon, which he was a dictator, and by whatever means, America has been able to hold on to that democracy, in spite of the fact that apparently, as far as I've read, they kind of wanted to get a king after they decided to become, or maybe somewhere along the lines, they were looking to a Dutch, I think it was a Dutch prince, and they sent a letter to him asking if he would become their king. And he said, well, what did you do with your last one? Was basically his point. And he decided, no, I don't want to be a new king. I don't know what you guys are going to do in the end. And of course, some of the people that were involved, I think, was it George Washington? They asked him if he wanted to be king, and he said no. So it wasn't as if someone had this shining vision, and everybody said, yeah, that's great. Let's work based on this idea of democracy. That wasn't really how it came about. But yeah, it has persisted for quite a while. But it's funny how the same way that Roman democracy developed and went forward is similar to how American democracy has gone forward. One of the ideas was that at the beginning, it was mainly the owners of land in Rome who were in the army. They had to be in the army, And I presume that they were also able to vote, and they were also able to go up for elected positions. And after a while, and I'm thinking mainly of the army here, but after a while in Rome, they said, hey, anybody can be in the army, not just people who are own land. And similarly, after a while, not just people who own land were able to vote in America. But then, I presume this young man, Julius Caesar, who was ambitious and wanted power, was able to get people behind him and seize the power of being a dictator. I mean, things had to align in a particular way, admittedly. So it doesn't seem as if, let's say, Mr. Trump would be able to pull something like that off. But when we look through history, we have someone like Julius Caesar. We have someone like Napoleon, who was able to become an emperor. We have someone like Hitler, who from a young age had this idea of becoming a leader and had a group of people underneath him and was able to find a way to become a dictator. So I think one of the things, if what I'm saying might hold water, one of the things that the United States will have to worry, I think it will probably become a dictatorship. I think there's no way beyond that. If we look at China itself, as even though it's a communist party, the leader was not supposed to be elected permanently. This guy Xi, he has been the first person in a number of years who has been able to extend his term limits and basically make himself a dictator. That's not something that was prior to that. There still was, maybe there wasn't democracy of the common people, but there was democracy, I think, to a certain extent within the Communist Party. And people were elected for finite terms. And yet here he is, a default new dictator. But she is a good bit younger than Donald Trump, I think, for one thing. So if it's to be something to look to in the future for America's eventual dictator, it could be that you would be looking for somebody who is amassing a considerable amount of power from a young age and is very, very ambitious. Somebody who can, similar to Donald Trump, he has a certain amount of charisma, and he's able to whip people up into a kind of a frenzy, like Hitler, like Napoleon, like some of these other people. So that's something that we might want to look out for. But anyway, overall, this was an amazing, for me, and for what I was interested in, it was an amazing documentary. I plan on looking at some more of these documentaries from the same YouTube channel. And another one of them that had to do with the Romans basically was confirming the fact that the Romans took so much different technology from so many different people. And I thought that was really cool. And I still want to know more about how they were able to accomplish what they were able to accomplish. So you can wish me lucks. You can like or unlike. You can comment, subscribe, and or share. Peace.